Hey there, everybody. Welcome back with the Plapper. Platypus is the name, and welcome to another Unicorn Overlord video. Today, we are talking about 3 example builds that I think you could do for the early game. Now, this is going to be 3-man formations. You can get the 4-man formations by the end of the demo, but I think most people are going to be dealing with 3-man formations for at least their first 5 to 10 hours roughly in their first playthrough, right? So I want to start here, and as we get more, this guy's face is too creepy. What the hell is wrong with it? Okay, he's just a guy with a mustache. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have been so mean. But before we jump into it, of course, you guys know what I gotta do. It's the rules. They're paying me money, so thank you very much for my supporters, my 5 awesome supporters. I really appreciate you. Shout out in all these videos. You're the real MVP. All right. So these aren't going to be min-maxed. They're not going to be perfect. Okay, I am human and we are still in the demo in the early game. But these teams all have an idea behind them. And I just want to say there's no such thing, at least in the current stage of the game, as a perfect team, right? There's enough unit counters where if you just go up against, you have this team built for this thing, but suddenly you just go up against 3 mages in an enemy party, and this team could get destroyed, but a team of just like, a couple archers with high initiative or something could win, right? So like you got to adapt, but these are kind of be general team identities. So let's go into them. We got 3 here. So they're kind of gonna go. I mean, maybe I'll go with them in a different order. I'll go with them, I think, the weakest to the strongest. So this is the first team here. I am doing it with some item and recommendations, but this isn't complete, especially because a lot of the items are going to be duplicated over the course. So I got a flyer on the front line. I got Lex the fighter in the back and Housecarl in the back. So this team is basically my idea of a stall engine. This is not your attack the enemy to win team. This is basically, this team is very stamina inefficient, but I think that they're going to be really hard to kill. And for the main idea that, so when I make this team, my idea was they're going to hold a garrison spot or a spot on the bridge, and they're just going to hold it forever, basically, if they want to. And then if you have to retreat them, switch out a different team, put that team in to go attack, that's something you could do. So, but what's the idea here? Basically, we got Griffin Knight on the front line. Now, one item that I want here that I don't have on this playthrough is the Lucky Coin. I don't remember where to get it. I will find it, just not on this playthrough. I'll find it sometime in the game. But you can't equip 2 of the same accessory, but the Lucky Coin, so the Silken Scarf gives 20 evasion. The Lucky Coin gives 20 evasion and 20% crit rate. So that would bring up the Griffin Knight's evasion, my Griffin Knight's evasion, to 83. What's important about the Griffin Knight is they get double the dodge rate versus ground melee attacks. So this isn't going to work against mages, but it is going to work against literally almost everything else in the game, anything that's on the ground. And they do double damage to cavalry. So this is basically an evasion tank without the evasion passive. So the idea here is that when they're get up to 83 evasion and then they're doubling it, right? That means they're at 66 or 166, sorry, like evasion. That it's just going to be really hard to actually hit this unit. Now, there are archers and things like that. So that is why we have Lex back here. Lex is a fighter. He has arrow cover. So if someone tries to attack anyone, but especially your flyer with an arrow attack, he's just going to jump ahead and get it. What I like about this build also, where if you are fighting someone else, like Lex is still relatively tanky. You could absolutely just have him come into the front line. I would be using the Azure Crest Shield if you can get multiple of them and you want them there, because it's just good at everything. Another good thing to note here is if like you do need Lex to tank a magic attack, which here's the thing, the Griffin Knight's actually pretty good at it. But let's say you're going into a fight actually where they're going to use magic attacks. You might want to do something to increase the max HP, because as long as they don't get one shot, they also have wing rest. So they're healing up 25% of their HP at the end of a fight, sometimes 50% if they're burnt or something like that, right? So the Griffin Knight, I think, is actually pretty hard to kill as long as you have the HP to support it. But mine's only level 6, it's pretty low HP wise. And basically the Housecarl is here for the main reason of just smashing things and parting blow. Again, this is a team where I'm expecting them to run into me multiple times, and the Housecarl just having 2 attacks will just get a lot of value, because we might have to do 3, 4, 5 combats with an enemy before they die. And so I think that they're just pretty good at dealing damage to things, but it's basically an evasion tank with the arrow cover backup to help them out. And also when you get later, like, you could absolutely do a fighter up front, shield bash, stuff like that. But I actually think that most of the time you're just going to have, and the fighter is replaceable. If you're not fighting archers in the fight at all, instead, you could put in something totally different and just increase your damage. You could put in a soldier and then have more, or a more traditional tanky unit as well, or even a thief. But this is kind of my idea, right? This is why, depending on what you're going up against, as long as it's not heavy magic users, I think that this will be pretty darn good. Now we're getting into the more offensive focused teams here. So this team is really all about Clive. It's the Knight. This is taking advantage of the Knight's ability to deal double damage versus infantry. It is an incredible, powerful, at least early game ability. Not to mention he could be your leader, and then that gives him a ton of mobility. Most of the time you're going to want that, the mobility of the cavalry. And also, they have less stamina than the soldiers at 5 instead of 6, which could be a big deal. But also, they just have reduced wait time while resting. So while you rest, you just rest quick, which is super nice. Which I actually think is the... I think that's what the wait time is actually down there. Yeah, that must be how long. It's called wait time. It should be called rest time, I suppose. But for Clive, basically what we want to get here, or your Knight, you can get a Knight better than Clive for sure. I like having the Unwavering Spear. I just like having the option of True Thrust whenever I want. You could have that on Clive, or you could have it on your soldier here. But basically, being able to guarantee a True Thrust, guarantee you could do an attack. It's an AoE attack, right? It hits the whole column. I'm just trying to read. Give me a second here. Being able to hit the whole column for guaranteed damage is so good. It works against thieves. It works against flyers. It works against other high evasion characters, right? I actually don't know if it works against parry. That's the one thing I'm not sure about. I haven't tested specifically True Strike against a character that could parry the attack to take no damage. I think it might work through that too, though, which would be kind of busted if it is. And then outside of the Unwavering Spear, you could use something that just does a little bit more damage if you find something, but it's also the highest damage spear that I found besides nothing. I like using the Battler Shield. You might want to use the Azure Crest Shield. I actually don't think it's that important. I just like having as high of a physical attack as possible because it's getting doubled essentially. Now, this is here basically the Pursuit Bracelet you can get, and that I would use this one, or I would use the Warrior's Medallion, basically. Either just get a little bit more damage and a higher chance to crit to absolutely obliterate things. But I actually like just having a follow-up attack on your PP as well, because otherwise your PP is going to waste. That's right. You don't use it, you lose it. And so I like having Pursuit because Quick Guard is not really that good. Now, if I got up to level 15 and I got the call here, before attacking with an active skill, you get 20% attack. That's when I'm really considering taking this off, because I can now use the PP for something and then going for something a little more Warrior's Medallion-esque, But that's basically what he does. He does a lot of damage. And the reason why it's so important is he has Assaulting Lance. If he defeats a target, he gets his AP back. That's huge. So if you can one-shot something, you can kill something, then you just get your stuff back. But honestly, the Warrior's Medallion's probably better just with the crit chance, if I'm being completely honest there. But I like the other one. So we have, Bruno's more important to go over first. Bruno is one of my favorite tanks because they're not weak to magic. They're not weak to physical. They're weak to both. Now, that sounds dumb, I know, but their whole identity is that they are a self-healing high HP tank, meaning items aren't particularly good on them for trying to heal, but they come in with a built-in recover extra HP, right? When they're hit by an attack, they get a bunch of HP. Now, maybe the most important thing about Bruno is that he is hard countered by something like a thief, where they'll attack him, steal his ability to heal himself, and then he's just high HP. But without the ability to heal a percentage of his HP, he kind of just falls flat on his face pretty quick. So you got to be careful. There are some fights where you may not want him to be your front tank. But outside of that, the item that I love the most is the Zenorian Axe. It just gives him 10 more HP, which is exactly what he wants. And then it gives him 2 physical and magical defense. Just because his stats are bad, physical and magical defense, doesn't mean you want them to be 1. You would still rather have it as high as possible. But it being 2 higher is just a nice little bonus there. The Vitality Talisman I like. It seems a little weak, I know, but I really do think HP is that important on him where you don't need that much more stuff. And I wouldn't use the Bronze Bangle. I would use the Lapis Pendant, but I don't have enough to have him on all the characters I want to have him on right now. And I'm going to show you another character with it on there. But basically, this means that he could use Bulk Up twice, just increasing his survivability tenfold. Not literally tenfold, but twofold, which is really, really good. And also, I don't want people to overlook Wide Smash. This ability is fucking nuts, bro. It does a 150 potency with an 80% hit rate. I know that's low, but it attacks a full row of enemies at a potency of 150. That's huge. But if he is at full HP, it does 200 physical potency. That's literally 2 Assaulting Lances in one go, right? It's like, that's an insane potency. And his physical attack is high. I mean, it's not insane, don't get me wrong, right? It's not as high as like our build around character like that. And I probably wouldn't go super, super high into that in general, but that is a big potency. I don't want you to overlook that. As far as later, the only other thing he gets is Wide Counter. Activates after an enemy attacks at an active skill. Counter attack a row of enemies. Kind of lame, but it's the thing is he's mostly built at the start of the fight. You know, at the start, level 1, he's got his 2 most important abilities, in my opinion. And then Chloe's hair for kind of synergizing in a unintuitive and a very intuitive way. Intuitively, First Aid, right? Bruno has a lot of HP. First Aid heals a % of HP at the end of combat. So if Bruno gets hit after he does his bulk ups and he's still not at full life, this will almost certainly top him off. Or at least it'll heal him big enough so he doesn't die in the next fight. But another thing that I think is really, really good about this is this means all 3 of your characters, if you have the Unwavering Spear on Clive, all 3 of your characters attack AoE, which I think is a big deal. Unwavering Spear and Wild Rush can both hit a column. The Long Thrust hits a column, and it's actually stronger versus Cavalry, but you could also use the Unwavering Spear here, and so you have that one, the True Thrust, because Wild Rush is also a column, and then he attacks a row. So he has the ability to attack a row, you've got an ability to attack a column, you've got an ability to attack a column, if your single target nuke isn't everything it needs. So this is kind of like secretly an AoE team, which I think is actually really good, especially when you're going up against certain like enemies that trigger a, you know, you want to drain their PP, ha 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 ha. Or, you know, it just, I've had this be really, really nice. Being able to hit huge amounts of enemies with each attack, getting, you know, it's basically like getting 2 attacks in one, right? That makes this into effectively a 200 potency. This into effectively, not a 200 potency, but a 160 potency that inflicts stun. And this into a God knows how much, you know, 600 potency in terms of if you actually hit all the attacks. So, that's basically what this team is, and it works pretty well. Now, sometimes Bruno gets slapped on, and you got to be careful. He's not an indestructible, invincible tank. He's an indestructible, invincible tank until he's suddenly not, and they just fucking kill him. If his initiative is too low and his bulk up doesn't keep him alive, like, I guess his initiative doesn't matter. But sometimes if they have 3 or 4 attacks and they just kick the shit out of him, I think that, like, that could be rough. But also on bulk up, I would probably make it own condition, or sorry, own HP is below 75%. If you don't lose more than 25% of your HP in an attack, I don't think he wants to use bulk up. If you get hit for 10, you're fine. If you get hit for 30, okay, maybe that's not fine. So just make sure you kind of mess with this in the pre-battle when you're kind of looking to see what you want to do, because I think that this playing with this can actually greatly affect the outcome of a fight, whether or not he lives or not. Now, finally, my personal favorite team is the all-in on my fucking favorite unit of all time, Sellsword. Sellsword is so fun. So, Sellsword is really, really good for a lot of reasons. I mean, they got kill chain, so they've got the ability to do what the knight does, but I don't like it as much because they don't deal double damage to infantry inherently. Heavy Slash is just pretty good. It just does always 150 potency, and this character has got insane attack. They got an S rank on their physical attack. I think the highest of any character that I've seen so far. But really, it's about following Slash. This ability is so good. After an ally is hit by an attack, you counterattack a single enemy. Which is important, is this doesn't say you counterattack any enemy, or like the enemy that hit. You just, after you get an ally gets hit, you just follow up with an attack, basically. So it's like really, really powerful. And if it hits, which it It's only got 90% hit rate, but I mean, I haven't seen it miss yet, or at least not consistently. Is you get the PP back, so you could do it again. So you could actually, this is kind of like a spin to win almost. You could think of it as like your ally gets hit, you attack, they get hit, you attack, they get hit, you attack, then you heavy slash attack, or you killing chain attack, following slash attack. So you can get like 3, 4, 5 attacks in one combat round with your 1 AP, which is insane. Now, to pair with this unit to make them good, you need either, in my opinion, the Lord, or you want the you might want to use the Hoplite in the early game and then the Lord a little bit later, because what's important is to get the Luminous cover or to get a cover ability. Before an ally is attacked, grants an ally plus 20% defense, and you cover them. That will mean that no matter who the enemy attacks, they're always going to proc the following slash, because either they attack your front line and it works like normal, or they attack your back line and your Luminous cover comes in and it just blocks it, right? And then when it blocks it, then that triggers because an ally got attacked, not you, and then you could hit them. Now, with this, I would use either, well, let's go to her equipment first. Obviously, the Kingsblade Cornyx is insane. I'm using that. But really, you just use whatever is a big damage sword. Probably the Bork sword or whatever. Is that what it's called? Baroque sword? The 5 accuracy is not irrelevant on this character because of the inherent slightly lower accuracy that they have built in. So I think that could be worth it. Hollowed Blade is good, but it's just for a little bit more damage. The Templar sword is fine, again, for a little bit more damage, but I like the Bark sword here, which is what I'm going to call it. And obviously the King's Blade is kind of broken early game. I have a video on how to get that, so you should consider that, as it is busted. Now, I think the Lapis Pendant is super actually important on this character. You could do all kinds of interesting things, like maybe it's better just to put a Mercenary's eye patch on and just get the extra crit chance and 1 more physical defense. That doesn't matter, but the 20% crit could be more important. But I really like using Crude Tacit, which gives you a 20% physical attack boost for the rest of the battle, which is huge, especially because you're getting so many attacks. But if you use this and you don't have an extra PP, then you don't get to use your following slash and your whole build kind of falls apart. But if you're going up against enemy shamans and they're going to target your back row, I would immediately get rid of this, keep the Lapis Pendant, and put on something else. You know, that's like if you're going up against shamans, put on the Mercenary eye patch, because the 20% extra damage is not good. If it's not better than following slash, it's basically so you could double up on your PP usage here. Now for Elaine, I like the Azure Crest Shield. It's just really good. You want to have 2 PP so your Luminous Covenant can go a bunch of times. You want the Gauntlets because you want to be able to guard things and have a high guard rate, even if they're attacking just you. You want the Templar Sword or the Runic Sword. The Templar Sword gives you a physical defense and a higher guard rate, but the Runic Sword gives you 3 magic defense. So if you're going up against mages, this makes him one of the better mage tanks in the game, honestly. So that could be really good. And so between him being able to guard everything, he's basically the best tank. He has great guard efficiency, great defensive stats, great access to weapons and, you know, stuff like that. But also he has the ability to self-heal when he's attacking. So if you put the lean edge on HP below 50% or something like that, he will just stand by. If he goes first in combat, he's just going to be like, I'm just going to wait here. And then he'll start going after his HP is down. So maybe 75% is better or something like that. But waiting till closer to the end of combat to start healing is, I think, super important. Because if you just go first, you hit and you don't get any healing, then you're kind of screwing yourself over if you end up fighting someone else that's then faster. So he's super tanky, super tanky. Very, very good unit. I would use the Kingsblade Cornyx on him too if you can get multiple, but we don't have that. It actually makes, like, if we put the Kingsblade on him, like, look how strong his defenses would be. I mean, he'd go up to 27 physical, 24 magical. So if you don't need quite as much damage, you need more tankiness, this sword makes you a tanking god. 5 HP, 5 physical defense, 5 magic defense. That's enough to shut down most units in the game. And now finally we have the Shaman. The Shaman, I think, is just kind of an insane unit, but this is definitely more of a flex spot. I think these two are the core. The flex spot here of the Shaman is Passive Curse is just so good. It inflicts -1 PP on the enemy. And now some enemies this is great against. It's great against anything like Thief. It's great against Bruno. It's great against frontline units for the most part. It's great against the Sword Master because they have a thing where they'll parry physical attacks. and it gives them an action point for when they do that. And this will kind of just get rid of that. And then lowering their initiative means your team's mostly going to go first, which is another reason why I like having lean edge not immediately trigger the first time your turn comes up. So I think that this is really good because you're already relying on most of your damage from the sellsword. This is something that kind of makes their shit just weaker in general. It could even help you one shot, especially when you're going up against gladiators or you're going up against people that parry. This could help you actually break through that pretty easily, to the point where, because it lowers their initiative by 10, I also like having actually doubling up on the action point of this. I think it's really that good. I think as far as the staff, I don't have a good staff on her yet. Nothing that she could use actually stands out. But being able to lower their initiative and their PP by 2 is just really good. But again, this is a flex spot. They're not always going to be good in every fight. Maybe you're in a situation where you really just want to kill shit and you just bring Clive and you just go all physical powerhouse. But there are times where no matter how many physical attacks, if you're going up against 3 sword masters, you're going to want something like this so you can actually start getting through. Or you're going to want to just bring mages and not at all. So this might not be the team for it. So the Dancer's Bracelet I specifically bought for this build of this character. Before an ally activates an attack, an active grants 30% physical attack for their next attack. So it's not for the rest of combat, but basically it's going to let you just absolutely boink something down to the ground, you know? So if the first character that comes up, because they're going to pass on their first turn almost always, and then so the first actual attack coming up is going to be your super strong character, your Bernice. And so you might be able to make it so Killing Chain does an insane amount of damage, because they're going to get an effective 50% damage boost, right? 30% physical attack on here, and then their own passive 20%. So maybe you just can straight out not do Killing Chain. Maybe you just do something like, you know, if you could figure it out on a specific enemy, if Killing Chain is just going to kill them outright, just start with Killing Chain. Because if you're basically doing 50% more damage, that's effectively more than a Heavy Slash could do, probably, or just about the same. But if you're not able to one-shot something, then Heavy Slash will certainly one-shot something. And then it's true that 30% isn't going to make your following slashes stronger, but I think Killing Chain is just synergistic with the Dancer's Bracelet, which is actually why I could also see you using it here. The issue is on this team, the reason I am not using it is because the PP is actually pretty important on this team, right? Bruno doesn't want to use it because he wants all of his PP. You could use it on this character, but I don't really like that because first aid is pretty good too, and you can't use it on yourself. So that is basically the 3 teams here. They've all worked pretty good for me. Now, I'm sure there's more combinations, more min-maxing, more this, more that. I mean, we haven't mastered the game yet. We're still playing in the early stages, but this is some of the early game team builds that I've really been enjoying and the ideas behind them. If there are things that I'm overlooking, things that I should do better at, things that I'm not doing well, I don't know. You know, let me know. Let me know in the comments. But until then, guys, the Perplatypus is Perplatypus, and I want to thank you again to my big boy, big dick streamer, or big dick members here, Shadows Den Gaming and Bring the Pain. Thank you very much for supporting the plat. It does mean a lot. It means a lot, so I really appreciate it. Guys, thank you very much. Perplatypus is Perplatypus. I'll see you on the flip-flops. You have a good rest of your day.